Claim number 1. Safety tools are overrated and can ruin games before they begin. Claim number 2. Role-playing isn't real. Any danger in-game is not real and cannot hurt you. Claim number 3. Adult games can have adult content. If it can happen in your favorite fantasy media, it can happen in your favorite fantasy game. Hey y'all, Jackson here, and I want to take some time today to address these claims. Now, these are based on conversations I've had within my own games, within talking to people at a game store or online, and some of my own thoughts on safety and the way we approach it in role-playing games like D&D. Now, I think these claims are somewhat valid. I'm going to assume they come from positive intent, but that doesn't mean I think they're right, and we're going to talk about each one. Now, I like safety. Some of my earlier videos on the channel are serious discussions on consent and pronouns, but more recently I've been getting into more dark fantasy. I made videos on the fucking Spartacus TV show. You know, I like safety, but I also like hardcore stuff. And getting to play around with hardcore stuff in role-playing games often means more safety, not less. Now, as far as these claims go, these are my attempts to kind of steel man the safety discussion if I were straw manning the safety discussion. Claim number 1. I should be able to run the game I want, and telling me otherwise is censorship. No. Censorship is when a government or business forces you to remove your work. Your friends or online randos calling you out on your shitty behavior is the consequences of your own action. Claim number 2. Consent is overrated and I will not agree to any social contract. Okay, I want to give some benefit of the doubt here because I have heard this one a lot and there is some misinformation around words like consent, but social contracts and consent agreements are often not literal contracts that you sign. Your dungeon master is not Christian Grey. There are social agreements for social activities, and there are often unwritten rules. You enter into a social contract when you enter a social activity, and you can back out of that social activity at any time. Claim number 3. Content warnings are basically spoilers and ruin the fun and spontaneity of roleplay. No, this one is silly, but I have heard it a lot of times. There's a difference between saying, hey, next session the villain will try to turn your character into a femboy werewolf, and heads up, next session may have some body horror and gender dynamics. This is the same as providing like a movie rating, and actually, if you want a good safety tool that doesn't scream safety in people's faces, I recommend you start using a movie rating for your games and allowing your players to adjust the movie rating up or down according to their preferences. So let's go back to the first valid claim. Safety tools are overrated and can ruin games before they begin. Okay, a lot of my channel has been talking about kind of the overused traditions in role-playing games, especially in D&D. Things like alignment that are done more out of some kind of obligation to the brand rather than something that is actually good for your role-playing table. And I want to analyze safety tools as possibly being in a similar offense. A lot of people use safety tools because they've heard it's what they're supposed to do, but they're not actually thinking about why they need this. And I've been in plenty of games that don't use any safety tools at all and haven't had a problem. I spent a couple years playing Pathfinder Lodge and D&D Adventure League games, and no one ever crossed the line that I can remember, and I'm usually pretty sensitive to that kind of thing if a line was crossed. So, do we need it? Let's talk about a practical example from my professional career. When my local game store was putting out interviews for a professional dungeon master to run their D&D summer camps, I went in and ran a test session where I included some very soft safety tools. I didn't use something like X cards, red light, green light, yellow light, or even yucks and yums that I use now. I just included some basic reminders for the players at the table who were also my interviewers. Things like, hey, everybody, remember to respect everybody at the table. Your character is real within the setting of this world, and we're all in this together. And that was enough to get them to hire me. Without telling me at the time, but they told me after, that this position had already been filled the year before by somebody they had to fire because parents were complaining that their kids were getting involved, or their characters were getting involved in cannibalism and ritual sacrifice at the table, and that really crossed the line for them. It was not what they wanted their kids to get into. So my manager asked me if that was the kind of thing that would be in my D&D game, and I said, for kids? No, probably not. We would draw the line somewhere. And an example of that came up in one of my first D&D summer camps. We were running kind of a pirate-themed Ghost of Saltmarsh thing, and they happened to come across a, piratey bar. And this is for kids anywhere from ages like 9 through 12. So I'm like, oh yes, come over here and get a root beer. And one of the 12-year-olds immediately called me on this, and they were like, no, we're pirates, dude. I want a real drink. Give me a gin and tonic. Okay, that's actually an interesting character choice for your pirate dude to order a gin and tonic at the bar, so I allowed it. If I would have pushed back in that moment in the name of safety to say, no, you're a child and there's no alcohol in this world, that wouldn't have worked. It also wouldn't have worked if I would have put up a page of safety information at the front of the game saying your characters won't drink alcohol. That's a challenge to a 12-year-old kid. We rolled with it, we saw what would happen, we played out the scene, and next session when the kid came back and doubled down and said, all right, my guy's always got a drink in hand because he's an alcoholic, we had a very quick conversation about, so alcoholism is something that real people have to deal with in real life. It's actually pretty serious. Are you prepared to play up the seriousness of what alcoholism means to your character? The 12-year-old kid, who was pretty mature for his age, was like, you know what? Actually, no. He's gonna drink in bars and stuff, but not excessively. And we're like, cool. And we moved on. It was fine. So are safety tools overrated and ruin games before they begin? Not always, but sometimes. I think it's important to establish respect at the table first. Then, as you're building your game and establishing trust, get into those serious safety talks with the applicable tools. And remember that not every tool is right for every group. Sometimes lines and veils work, sometimes X cards work. Figure out what's right for the people at your table, not just something you heard online and now you're going to apply it everywhere. So let's go to our second claim. Role-playing isn't real. Any danger in-game is not real and cannot hurt you. Part of role-playing any scenario really is to create a safe testing ground because you aren't ready to face it in real life right now. Fantasy role-playing allows for far removed scenarios, allowing for depictions of more hardcore content to keep greater distance from our own reality. However, game scenarios can get too real. Using safety tools shouldn't be about rejecting every harsh thing that can happen, but figuring out where the line is. And figuring out where that line is creates a safe space. And I think that there's also some misconceptions about the word safe space. So for my next example, I don't want to talk about a D&D party, I want to talk about an actual party. My senior year in college, me and my group of bros were living across from the frat house. Now, the frat house would have wild parties as you can expect. They were so wild and so successful that it was too big for their frat house, and the frat guys were buddies with us. We weren't best friends, but we knew each other. So at one point, we initiated the appropriate bro rights for a bro council. The frat guys approached us and said, hey, we need an overflow space for our parties. You guys have a reputation for being the chill dudes with cats and board games and all that jazz. So when people get too wilded out from our antics, they can head over to you guys' place. You provide drinks and snacks, we provide our stuff, everybody can mingle in between. Sound good? Yeah, sounds good. And we had several parties like this. They were the frat guys, we were the cat guys. Now, you might picture that we were the safe space and they suddenly weren't, but no, not really. We were providing a safe space, but in doing so, the frat guys also provided a safe space. Everyone coming into either house knew that they were in for a party. And this entire party thing across the street was a safe ecosystem for that party. And it deserves to be mentioned that it wasn't just frat guys and cat guys. Our neighbors were also the cool party chicks, and we got their blessing. They would come over. There was always a sober chick who was watching over both parties, making sure nothing got too unsafe. And yeah, everyone had a good time, and your gaming safe space can be like this. You can have your wild, debaucherous frat guy times and still provide that cat guy space. You can provide breaks from very serious combat, big villainous speeches, and tragic flashbacks. And on the note of the cool chicks, I think it's a good idea to have diversity at your D&D table. And I don't mean capital DEI diversity, like you have to make sure that Tolkien Black is playing at your game, although he would probably enjoy it. I mean, his name's Tolkien, right? Anyway, make sure that you have some different perspectives at your board game table. That's going to be good. That's going to provide different avenues of safety to see what everyone's different guardrails are and to make sure that somebody at the table, it doesn't have to be the DM, is kind of on lookout to make sure that everybody is staying comfortable no matter how crazy your scenarios get. So in conclusion on this claim, sure, role-playing isn't real and is already kind of inherently a safe space, but just like a party can get too dangerous if you're not watching your alcohol intake, or if you're around the wrong frat guy, or frankly the wrong cat guy, your role-playing scenario can also get into a too real, dangerous emotional space for some people. So establish your safe space a little more with guardrails. They don't have to be stated outright to still be present. And if you accidentally cross over one of those guardrails, it's okay. Have a backup plan so that you can get out of that dangerous scenario and back into your bastion. So let's get to our last claim, that adult games should be allowed to have adult content. Sure, if you like Game of Thrones, Witcher, Dragon Age, Warhammer, or, fucking Berserk, you should be able to embrace some of those harsh vibes in game and find some people that can match your freak. Sure. However, just because it happens in your game world on the whole doesn't mean that that's a scenario you have to play out. That is a whole different level of investment and roleplay, and you need to recognize that and see what people are comfortable with. For example, torture is a thing that is going to probably happen if you're in a war scenario, if you're playing with devils especially, but there's a difference between saying, yes, that's happening, the 9 hells are a real place, and actually playing out a torture scene in combat order, something that I have done and been a part of and don't want to ever do again because it just got really gross. And speaking of gross, and speaking of somewhat silly YouTube censorship, sexual assault and rape is overused in fantasy fiction, especially like Game of Thrones, and it could happen in your dark fantasy world. And it actually happened very recently in one of my own games. In the playtest for my Struggler RPG that I'm making as a fan project for Berserk, one of the player characters was Luca, and in an incident where this kid character, Isidro, was about to be mobbed by these crazed out heretic hunters, Luca sacrificed herself, went back, rolled on the consequence table, and what the player chose out of the two consequences that he rolled was to be violated. Now, the rules said this was a possibility. I headed up at the front of the game that this is something that could happen, and if somebody wasn't okay with that, we could change it, and nobody wanted to change it. So when it happened in game as a result of events of the story and the rolls of the dice, we didn't change it. We rolled with it. It happened, but we also didn't revel in it. We didn't play it out. Once it was established that this was going to happen to this character, we faded to black. Yet another good safety tool I would recommend anybody use. We took it seriously and we played up the survivorship aspect of that character when she did come back, which is keeping with the themes of Berserk, because while you might know about a certain event in Berserk, even if you haven't seen Berserk, what you might not know is that the main character is also a great survivor, and it's very important to his development. So if we would have shied away from it, we would have been taking away from the story and from the themes already present in the work we're trying to recreate. So I don't think it was a terrible decision that we stuck with that in our game. So, in conclusion on this claim, respect that everybody is grown up and can handle a lot, but that doesn't mean you have to handle everything. Some things will go too far. If we would have actually played out that scenario instead of playing the black, that would have gone too far. You don't have to sanitize your world, and I don't think you should, but you also shouldn't make it needlessly toxic just to be edgy. You can present harsh scenarios that can be overcome, or even if they can't be overcome, you can accept that. Just like watching a good horror movie where you know everybody's gonna die, the catharsis can come from, okay, everybody died, that was really cool, it was really gritty. There are role-playing games that are like this. Plenty of dungeon crawl classics or Call of Cthulhu games frequently end with your characters dying horribly, but everybody knows that up front, and that's what makes it okay. Now, this doesn't cover everything in the wide world of role-playing game safety, because I don't want to keep making claims and arguing at myself. I would love to hear from you guys. What's something that I missed? What are spaces where you think we should be pushing harder on safety or backing away a little more to allow more adult harsh content? Let me know down below. No matter what, I hope you have a Nat 20 day. Bye-bye.